In this section, we're going to show you how to use a tool setter. So this is our tool setter. It doesn't matter where you put the tool setter. So the first thing we're going to do with a tool setter is make sure that it's actually all connected correctly. We're going to put our longest tool in, which in this case is tool number 3. Okay, all right. This is our ground wire for the tool setter. And what we do is we just clip it on. It's just an alligator clip. We clip it onto the top of the spindle. We have connectivity all the way through the spindle to our tool. There's no insulating parts between here and the tool. So the ground wire works perfectly for this if you just clip it up here. If by some chance you forget that this is on there and you turn your spindle on, it's just going to pop off. You don't have to worry about ripping your entire control into the spindle or damaging anything. So this is a pretty safe place to put your ground cable. Okay, if you go to the F1 screen, we have, and usually it's up here like this, just drag it down to the bottom, okay? And we use input number 23 for the tool setter and 24 for the probe, okay? And both of these should be in low when there's no contact, okay? So the way you test this is you take your tool setter, okay, and you just touch it to the bottom of your tool. And when you do that, you'll see that your status changes from low to high. So the tool setter is connected correctly and it is working properly, okay? So that's the first thing. Okay, so then the next one is you want to put this someplace where there's easy access, where it makes it quick. You don't want your tool setter all the way over at the far end of the table because then you have to move all the way over there. What I generally do is I'll go into MDI and -2 and -2. -2 in the X and -2 in the Y gets me off of my homing sensors, and it's generally it's not going to be in the way of your work. Again, you can pick any place you want. If you have something really big mounted on here and you're limited for area, then choose a location that works for you. So right now I'm just going to go G90, G00, X -2.0, Y -2.0. Hold on, mistake. Okay, right now I'm in work offset number 54. So if I go to that position, work offset 54 is 0 is here. It's going to go about to here. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to go to this machine position. So instead of using, so G90, GOO, I'm going to go G53, which is my machine coordinate system, X -2.0, missed my decimal point, 0, Y -2.0. I'm going to hit enter. Okay, if you look up on your machine position, it's showing X -2, Y -2. So using G53, it's all machine coordinate related to your homing sensors. It's not related to any other work offset that you might have, in this case, G54. So that's the position I want to go to on my machine, -2 and -2. The next one is I'm going to be able to set my Z axis. So we're at X -2, Y -2, and I want to move my Z axis up to Z -2. Right now, it's showing me at Z -2.98. So right now, if I punch in G53, Z -2.0, it'll move up to actual machine position 2.0. So that's basically where I want it to be. Now to show you something that can happen to you, because it just happened to us. When you use G54 or G55, those are modal commands, which means once they're in there, for instance, if I punch in, well actually once they're in there, they stay in there. So if I just use G54 to move up to a distance of Z -2.0, for the next line of code, I could just punch in, say, X plus 2, Y minus 1, any position, and it's going to remember that it's in G54 and it's going to move there. G53 is not modal, okay? So I just told it to go to G53, Z minus 2, which is my machine coordinate here. I decided right now that I wanted to go to Z minus 1 instead, all right? And I just punch in Z minus 1.0. If G53 was modal, then it would just move up 1 inch to Z minus 1 inch. If I hit it now, you can see that I just crashed my tool into my tool setter. Okay, and that's because G53 is not modal and it's using the G54, which is modal, which is showing up here. So anytime you want to make a move with a G53, you have to type in G53 on each line, Z minus 2.0. So if you're using G53 to move around, just realize that it's not modal and you do have to type it in every time you type on a new line for a tool move. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to put my tool back in here. Okay, so for my tool setter, you can eyeball it right there, 2 inches and 2 inches. And on my table, I have these 4 holes drilled and tapped, and it's right about in the middle of those 4 holes. So anytime I want to use this, I just clean it off, make sure my table's clean, put it in that position right there, and I'm in the ballpark, okay? We already checked to make sure that my tool setter's working, so we'll test again. Oh, hold on, that came off. All right. Okay, my tool setter is working. Our ground wire had come off. Now I'm going to go to, on the F1 screen under machine settings, I'm going to go to Auto Tool 0 and tap it twice. In order to enable my tool setter, you have to turn it on and you just check this box right here that says Enable Auto Tool 0. Okay, then over here, you can put in the positions that you want to go to every time it does a tool setter or goes to touch off on your tool setter. So for right here, in the x-axis, we're going to punch in, and these are machine coordinates, G53. We're going to punch in minus 2.0, y-axis, minus 2.0, z-axis, safe distance. So what this is your tool is always going to go all the way back up to your home position as Z after it gets done touching the tool setter. So this is the distance that it will rapid from machine 0 and Z down to before it starts to feed to find the tool setter. Okay, so we're at minus 2. I would say the rest of my tools are all shorter. We're going to go for this one minus 3.0. Okay, then the feed rate, we're going to stay with the 5 inches a minute. That's a good feed rate. It gives the time for the touch off to happen. It's not too fast to where you'll actually crash through this before the signal actually gets into the computer. Then if I want to use these positions, just like on the tool setter or the tool changer, I'm going to click enable and enable. So it will actually use that position to go to every time it does a tool set. And then we click save. So right now, we have tool number 3. The computer knows it's tool number 3. And I want to tool eye tool number 1. So right now I'm going to go to MDI and I'm going to type in T1 M6. Okay, So it just moved to my tool change position that we put in previously, which is -2, -1.5, and -2.5. And it's telling me to press cycle start after tool change. So I'm going to put in tool number 1. Okay, and again, it just has to be finger tight. And I'm going to hit cycle start. Okay, when I do that, the Z-axis goes all the way home. Now the Z is going to wrap it down to the 3 inches that we put in there. And now it's going to feed down at 5 inches a minute until it touches the tool sensor. Okay, so right now, for every tool except for my longest one, this is going to take a bit of time. So I think we're going to change it a little bit here. If you look right here, this is the machine position. The number that shows here is what it's actually going to put in for tool number 1 on the tooling page. And if you look like you're off a little bit, just shift your tool setter over so you're on center line, or you're on where a cutting edge is actually going to hit the tool setter. Okay, it touches and it goes all the way back to Z home. Okay, now if we go to we'll exit out of MDI, we go to the tool setter. Okay, and for tool number 1, we have -8.08631. So that's the distance from my machine home to the top of the tool setter. What I'm going to do now, so I don't have to wait so long, is on my tool auto, my auto tool 0, for my Z minus, I'm going to punch in -5.0, save. So now it'll wrap it down 5 inches before it starts to feed to touch. Okay, so right now I want to touch off my next tool, which is my spot drill, tool number 2. So I'm going to go to MDI, and I'm going to go T2, M6, enter. Goes to my tool change position, tells me to change my tool. Then hit cycle start. It's going to zero out and come down and touch the tool. So we're going to -5 inches. And now it's going to feed until it touches it. And then all the way home. If we go back to the F1 screen and tap on the tool auto set, okay, with the enable set up like this, save. Every time I do a tool change and every time I home the machine out, it's going to go through this tool setter cycle. Okay, so right now I've got tool number 2 in there, and I'm going to home out the machine just because. Let's say it's the end of the day, I come in tomorrow, I turn it on, and I home out the machine like I'm supposed to. It's now going to go through and do the tool touch off on tool number 2. So if you have it set up this way, make sure that you leave tool number 2 in here when you shut it off, because it's going to try and tool set this again. Okay, the next one is when you have it enabled like this. If I'm running this program right here, every time in the program where it does a tool change, it's going to change, it's going to come over, tell you to change the tool, which you do, and then as soon as you hit the cycle start, it's going to come over and tool set the tool. Okay, if all my tools were held in chucks like this, and I was changing tools constantly, then this is the way I would run it. Okay, if I change this drill, I don't have to worry about any length difference, because in the way it's set up, as soon as it changes to this tool, it's going to come over and touch, change the number of my offset, and then come over and run that tool. Okay, because most of our tooling is all fixed. All of our end mills, the length is not changing at all. Okay, so the way I prefer to have this set up is, if we go to the F1 screen and go to Auto Tool 0, You have this box you can check that says only tool auto 0 when manually requested. So if I click this, then whenever I do a tool change, whenever I home the machine, it's not going to go through this tool touch off cycle. So I'm going to hit save and back to jog. Okay, so right now if I go to MDI and tell it I want to have tool number 1 in there again, T1, M6. It's going to move to the tool change position, tell me to change my tool. Change my tool. Hit cycle start, and it moves to the tool setter position, but it doesn't do anything. So it just changed my tool. Okay, in a program, it'll move to tool changer position, change the tool, and then just take off and start running the next tool without doing any tool setter touch off. Another way to touch off your tools, which is even easier, if you go to your tooling page, this is tool number 1. If I double click on it, before we told it to enable the tool setter, this right here just said 0. We brought our tool down, we touched it off on the top of the part, and we hit 0, and it put that length into our tool offset, okay? When you have it enabled, now it changed from 0 to auto tool 0. So I can put tool number 1 in, just touch auto 0, it'll home it out in the Z, come down. And to make this faster, touch off my part. Okay, puts that new tool number in there. Okay, now I just take my tool off. Actually, first I hit save. Okay. Now put my next tool in here. And this is tool number 2. I just double click on tool number 2. Auto tool 0. And it'll come down and hit for tool number 2. Okay, again, I'm going to touch it just to speed this up. And it puts that number in there. So that's the quicker way of doing it instead of going through MDI. And you can go through all of your tools one at a time. Always hit save after it's done to input your information. To show you the next part of the tool setter, I'm going to make some changes. First, I'm going to retool set number 2 and 1 so they're done properly and the numbers are correct. But before I do that, I'm going to go to the F1 screen, auto tool. I only have one tool that's long and it's already been touched off, so I don't want to wait watching this thing feed forever. So I'm going to change my Z safe distance to -7.0, save. I'm going to go back to my tool offset. This is tool number 1. I'm going to double click on tool number 1, hit auto tool 0, and now it's going to wrap it down 7 inches instead of 5, and a lot less wait time here waiting for it to touch the tool setter. So that's tool number 1. And we'll do tool number 2, and then all my tools, the number should be correct. Okay, I hit save on tool number 1. I go to tool number 2, double click, auto tool set. Hit save. Okay, so now tools 1, 2, and 3 are all set properly with the tool setter. Okay, if I go into MDI right now, let's double check. Okay, G54, I don't have any numbers in the Z, I just have X and Y coordinates. I go into MDI right now, okay, and I'm on tool number 2, and I tell it to go to 100 thousandths, Z plus 100 thousandths. I go G90, G00, Z 0.1. Okay, so that's 100 thousandths above my tool setter. So right now my numbers in my tool offsets are all related to this tool setter surface right here. So I'm going to go home and Z, send it home. Okay. Right now I'm going to change tools to tool number 1 because this is my end mill, which is going to be doing most of the work on this part when I run it. I put him in there. Okay, and I'm going to tell it T1. I'm going to go to the MDI page, T1, M6, enter. So it's going to go to the tool change, tell me to change to tool number 1, which I already did. Cycle start, and it goes back to where it started from. Okay, so right now it has tool number 1 in there. So all of my tools are referenced with this top of my tool setter as Z0. Okay, the reality is when I run this part, this is where I want my Z0 to be, the top of the part. So this is another very nice feature on MASSO. On most of your other software, they use a length compensation, a G43 to incorporate the length number on your offset page, and then when it's done, a G49 to cancel it, to send it back home. On MASSO, all this information is all wired into it. It's all connected. So I can change tools if I have this guy anywhere. Like right now, it's not where it belongs. I can change tool to tool number 3 or 4 and tell that tool to go to Z0, and without homing this out, canceling anything, it'll bring that tool right down to my Z0 point or whatever point I want it to go to. Okay, because they're wired this way, all I have to do right now is touch this with a tool. This has already been done on the tool setter. I'm just going to come over, I'm going to touch it to the top of the part. So we're going to go to jog and continuous, and actually, let's see, what was my park position? Park position was the center of the hole. That saves me some jog time. I'm going to go to jog, Z minus. Okay, and I want to go over the part. Okay, I want to go to increment, either that or slow it down a lot. Okay, that's pretty close. Now I'm going to go to increment or step mode, and it's at 10th thou. I'm going to move my cutting edge over the top of the part. I'm going to get my shim stock out. Okay, and I'm going to start stepping it down. And it's within 10. I'm going to change to 1 and move until it touches the shim. Okay, right there is just touching the shim. Okay, now all I have to do is 0 my DRO readout for Z0. Okay, go back to MDI and send it home. Right now, if I tell this tool to go to 0.1, okay, it will now go to 0.1 above this surface, and all the other tools will do the same thing. So what we just did was we taught the controller the distance from the top of the tool setter to the top of our part where we actually want the Z0 to be when we start running this part. And the controller just does some mathematical adjustments. the numbers on your tool offset page don't change. If you break a tool, change a tool, you still have to come over and tool set it to this tool setter, and then it will do all the math for you to figure out what the difference is from the tool setter 0 to the part 0 when you run your program. So now, because we've zeroed it out and it knows that this is the 0 surface, if I just tell it G90, G00, Z 0.0, it should come down right to that surface there. Okay, that's top of the part right there. Okay, if I tell it to go home, I'm going to tell it to change to tool number 3, T3, T3, M6. Change my tool. Cycle start. I'm going to go home in the Z. So right now it knows it has tool number 3 in there. I have not done any length compensation, canceling, or anything else. And I'm just going to go G90, G00, Z 0.0. Again, we're right at the top of the part. So the control has done all the mathematical adjustments. Go home. Okay, the only warning on this, obviously the control's keeping track of all the different offsets, what tool you have in there, where you're telling it to go, and it's making all these mathematical adjustments. You have to make sure that the tool that's in here is the tool that's showing on the screen. If I arbitrarily change a tool and tell it to move, and it thinks it has this tool in here, tool number 1, when in fact it has tool number 3, and I tell it to make the same move, it's going to crash. All right. So unless you're giving it a command to change to a tool, or it's in the program telling it to change to a tool, don't arbitrarily change your tools because you will have problems. So I would look here first to see what tool it thinks it has in there. Right now it's tool number 3, and then you can move tool number 3 wherever you want to, and the moves, the calculations, and everything should be correct.